everyone. Is this on? It's on. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to FIT. I'm Mary Davis. I'm the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies here, and the Art Market program is one of our signature programs in the graduate school. So we are very happy to have you here tonight. We haven't done a program quite like this at least in the 5 years that I've been here, and from what I'm hearing and learning about your project, it seems like exactly the kind of thing that we want to do more of here at FIT. So I just wanted to say we're happy to have Hands Off Our Revolution in the house tonight, and looking forward to what unfolds as the evening goes on. And I want to turn the podium over to the chair of our Art Market Department, Dr. Natasha Degen.
Hi, everyone. Just on behalf of the Art Market program, I wanted to welcome you as well and say that we're so pleased to be part of this conversation and this discourse. And I'm also very pleased to introduce the moderator for tonight. Brooke Lynn McGowan is a native-born Californian who completed her graduate studies at Cambridge University and completed fellowships at the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris under Georges Didi Huberman. Also at Harvard University with both the Carpenter Center for Arts and the Carr Center for Human Rights at the Kennedy School, and at Columbia University. She has taught as a professor of philosophy, performance, and art history, as well as acting as director of studies for the program in history of photography also at Cambridge University. She has worked as a writer and curator, recently completing projects last autumn with the Triennale in Milan and the Louvre in Paris, as well as working with Outset Contemporary Art, the Tate Americas Foundation, the Barbican Gallery in London, the Louise Bluin Foundation, and finally, the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. So I'll turn it over to her now. Thank you all so much.
That sounds really impressive, but trust me, I'm incredibly nervous. So my job tonight is mostly to introduce our speakers, as well as to introduce the question that we're asking here of you. And when we first came up with the idea for a workshop, and now it's a set of workshops running concurrently in Berlin, London, Chicago, and here in New York this week, what we wanted was really to reach out to the constituency of people who were like-minded, just as we were, very much outraged at the current political situation, but looking for a way in which to respond as makers of culture, as people in creative industries who may or may not have had experience in direct political action or organization or anything of that nature before. And within that, we're asking the question of what has socially engaged art practice looked like in the past? How does it engage with power structures that exist now or perhaps in a different way, exist at a different time, in a different place? In that way, this comes back to the way in which we want to structure this as a workshop, as what I kept calling a think-in, meaning not a teach-in, not something where we're trying to tell you the answers, but where we're trying to engage in a dialogue that opens up the questions. This is a GIF that was nicely made for us by Mark Titchener. Just a little history of the organization, our very young organization. This is the mission statement that all of the original 200 artists from all areas of the world subscribed to or signed on to as something that they agreed to in spirit. And of course, we're very open to critique or to modifications of kind of how we come about this. But it was Hal Foster who said to me, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, although he wanted to be, who said to me that that he signed this petition because of his belief in the radical nature of art. And this is something that we'll come to in terms of the question of representation and language. But he said, you know, the contentious part is, where is this revolution? Who is leading this revolution? And how do we turn the tide of it? He says, the revolution now is a revolution on the right, which is overtaking the discourse of the left, which has believed in tolerance and equality for the last, you could say, you could say 43 years or 50 years, if you know, however you want to date the time period of an opening up of civil rights and legislation towards a more inclusive society. And so his question and our question is, how can art and art practice be relevant again as it was during a time period of the civil rights movement, of overturning certain long-held beliefs? How do we now overturn the tide of right-wing populism again? So within that, this question of the radical power of art and the possibility of a radical power, we organized this workshop and the workshops like it and this is the same question everywhere in the world at the moment that we're running this, since we had to collaborate, and it took a very long time to come to these words, by the way. Our desire tonight is to begin to, and I say this, that it's very much a question of beginning. There are no definite answers. To identify the scope of what the cultural resistance to populism, by which we mean, of course, right-wing populism, might be, the particular forms and public spaces in which it can and should occur, how to best support cultural practitioners in their political resistance. I only read that out because we argued over the words for a while. Those of us who are here tonight know how long. There was like 6 hours of conversation over those two sentences. So just to give you an idea of what else we're doing as an organization, we have 7 core organizing members and about 2,000, or is it 2,500 additional members, some of which are here tonight, that it signed up since we officially launched in February. There was an unofficial email that certain people like David Birkin and myself received from Adam Broomberg, who originally conceived of this movement, if you want to put it that way. Some people called it a movement. Adam Broomberg is a photographer. He lives between Germany and London, but he's originally South African. He deals a lot with idea of identity, archive, authorship, the communication of the image, and within that structures of power that are nascent within those practices. And the end of December, I received an email from him after knowing that he'd been working with his students in Germany on different poster projects to respond to the rise of right-wing populism in Germany. And so he asked me to reach out to certain individuals in the United States or in Britain to see what more we could get in terms of student responses. So this really started as a grassroots organization. And we had more and more overwhelming, very positive responses until it became a question of trying to reach out to the larger community of artists and creatives and curators and institutions to see how we can unify some kind of strategy for response. And within that, we have organized now this set of workshops, which will be monthly and ongoing until possibly participating in the Creative Time Summit, which is our goal in September. We've also been asked to participate in certain things. So one of those, for example, is something called, I'm going to mispronounce this right, Neue Slowischen Kunst. It's the, thank you, Neue Slowischen Kunst. So the Neue Slowischen Kunst is a part of the Venice Biennale. Slava Zizek is giving a talk during it. The basic tenet of it is as an artist collective of a state in time. And so we were asked as a collective and as a group to respond to a series of questions that they posed us in terms of a borderless future. So of course here in New York, one of the things that we're very worried about is immigration, is xenophobia, is questions of borders. And later tonight you'll hear from some Iranian American women who are artists who respond in kind to that kind of rhetoric, and also as individuals obviously have to respond to it. So they approached us to participate in their pavilion, and they issue passports primarily. That's their one of their artistic objects which is involved. It's a very conceptual project, obviously. And they are actually issuing passports to asylum seekers in Venice this year, in cooperation with the municipality and the Center for Refugees. So they are, in a sense, very much politically engaged with how the arts can at least make a statement. We don't know what will come out of it, but will at least make a statement against the treatment of refugees in Europe. And certainly that was a very European-based initiative. When we were asked the questions were really about, so here's one of their passport offices in the past. The questions that they gave us were really about the future of Europe and European heritage. And so one of the questions that we have to answer tonight is, what does this mean from an American perspective? What does it mean to be American cultural producers and situated in New York, in the heart of Trump America, which I think anyone who has shown up tonight obviously disagrees with, although I'm not assuming anyone's politics. And one of the second or the third major initiatives, I should say, that we are going forward with, because we're very much a platform, is something called the Summer of Hope that's being organized out of the Women's March organizers in London. And they're organizing something here in London. Obviously, we'll do it in other parts of the world as well, called the Summer of Hope. So there'll be a week of events that brings an artistic response to the Women's March, and this will take place in July. So obviously more information forthcoming. But with that, I guess without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker. David, do you want me to use your middle name? David K. Goldstein, who, interestingly enough, I just met tonight. And David is not an artist per se. He was trained as an opera singer. His experience is primarily political. He's worked in polling in the Obama administration and for Hillary Clinton. And he's also worked in passing initiatives that required a lot of political activism, like Obamacare. And so I thought, to give a sense of a grounding of this conversation tonight, and to do something that's very important to me, which is to reach out to other disciplines, so that we're not just speaking in a narcissistic vacuum of our own ideals, that we ask the question of, what does this look like from the perspective of politics? Who are the radical right populists, and do we even know who they are, before we can start looking at what the strategies have been for individual artists, what they found to be successful, and maybe how they think about addressing this new discourse. And in saying this, I just want to preface that one of the most important things here is that there is a relationship between representation and representation. And what I mean by that, there's a relationship between artistic representation and who represents the populace and the people, however you want to put it, and a sense of taking responsibility for that representation politically as well as artistically. So we're kind of tearing this fine line here, and I'm very open also, as we have seen in the workshops happen in Berlin and in London, in the questions of, how are you represented by this? What is the language that you agree with or don't disagree with? But of course, obviously, as cultural producers, we want to come back to practice. So without any more of me speaking, I will let David have the floor.